that tournament. That was the story of the tournament. However, Chris Andersen, Green Red Devotion, another Open Series top 8 in an uncovered Standard Open.
So Chris here this weekend on 3 copies of Hangerback Walker in the main deck. I was wondering if these Affinity lists would start going to a little more modular action once Hangerback Walker entered the list. And Chris is playing with 2 copies of Arcbound Worker, the 1-drop, on top of the copies of Arcbound Ravager.
Got ourselves a Chromatic Sphere to start here for Joe Lossett. A Blinkmoth Nexus for Andersen, a whole bunch of Ornithopters, and a Passing of the Turn.
Sweet deck. Pyroclasm's really good in this matchup because they often have a lot of 2-toughest creatures they play early in the game.
They do.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It's also just super important in the matchup as Joe's going to crack the sphere for either green or red to just interact with them early. Slow down their Affinity count, slow down what Mox Opal can do, all of that stuff. Now he's going to be casting a copy of Ancient Stirring, so we'll take a look at the top 5. Yes, 5, Joe. 5. Not as many as last time.
Stop.
Yeah, stop right there. There you
okay.
go. See, he remembers. He remembers.
Ugin does not seem great in this matchup.
It's horrible. It is truly horrible.
Does not seem great.
So there's this weird thing about Tron, right, where the deck pulls you in a bunch of different directions. Like Pyroclasm, an A in some matches, and F- in others. Ugin, you can say the same thing. So when Ugin first got released, as Joe's going to play Urza's Mine into Relic of Progenitus and pass the turn back, I was actually very anti-Ugin because Affinity is a really popular deck because 1, it's like an aggressive deck, 2, it's pretty cheap to build. So, you know, you'll see a lot of this deck in Modern. So immediately I was like, I don't want anything to do with Ugin. Same way I feel about All's Dust, too. All's Dust an F- in this matchup. Steel Overseer here for Andersen. He'll pass the turn back over to Lossett. Lossett has drawn another copy of Urza's Mine, but he has the power plant, so Tron is online. What's the follow-up? It's a Karn Liberated, timely. Steel Overseer, kindly leave.
Yeah, I like getting the Overseer here because none of Chris's other cards do anything.
That's just good analysis there.
Since you know they're Ornithopters. They have no power.
Darksteel Citadel looks to be the land here for Chris. Now, another thing, too, to know about this matchup, this is pretty rare, actually, where Karn actually isn't particularly good in the matchup.
Makes sense.
You'd rather have Wurmcoil Engine a pretty healthy amount of the time. But situations can arise like this one where Karn actually is kind of like an A+ right now, if we're being honest.
They've only got one thing going on.
Yeah.
They have, you know, a bunch of irrelevant creatures in cranial plating.
Yep.
Or they have Steel Overseer. And Karn can be very good. Not common, but it comes up.
Yeah, it lined up pretty well here. Now, here's an Arcbound Ravager, and this is the card that can make Karn actually pretty bad because, you know, Karn wants to take down Arcbound Ravager. Arcbound Ravager can modular onto other things.
But Lossett can simply pivot and say, okay, either Andersen needs to sacrifice a bunch of stuff to get Karn off the table this turn, or Lossett can simply untap and start plussing Karn. Andersen's down to 1 card in his hand.
Chris is going to make his Ornithopter into a 4-power creature, get Karn off of the battlefield, lose some lands in the process, pass the turn back with a Vault Scourge and a Shrapnel Blast in hand. So we're going to head back Lossett's way. He's got Tron. He's got a Relic. He'll take a draw step here. A lot of good draws available here for Joe. A card like Oblivion Stone, another Karn. Looks like he has an Ancient Stirring. Looks like he has another Karn in hand. We're going on easy mode right now. That Ornithopter is probably going to have to leave, so that's going to get exiled.
I mean, conceivably, Joe could have also just gotten the last card out of his hand there as well.
Yeah.
A lot of good routes.
Oh, 2 cards in Chris's hand. Vault Scourge and Shrapnel Blast. And now Cranial Plating. That Spellskite is becoming more of a main deck card in Tron right now. And it does have some applications in the matchup. It's not huge or anything because having an 0-4 on the ground is not that big of a deal. But modular is something that can be redirected onto Spellskite. So that's nice. And then Shrapnel Blast, well, I'll take 2 instead of 5.
Yeah, Chris going with a pretty burn-heavy approach here. 4 copies of Galvanic Blast and 4 copies of Shrapnel Blast in his list.
Relic will activate. Looks like Ornithopter will be exiled.
As you mentioned, this feels like easy mode right now.
At this point, he's getting pretty close to it because now Joe also has a copy of Ancient Stirrings in hand, along with the Grove of the Burn Wolves. He's going to start by sacking the Relic to draw a card. This will help inform his draw step and what he wants to do on the turn. Urza's Tower is the draw.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, he can plus Karn, play Eye, start getting Wurmcoils. A lot of good routes here.
In case you were curious, Joe is somehow still at 20, though he's playing against an aggressive deck.
Yeah, I mean, Chris started off strong with 3 creatures on the first turn. Unfortunately, they don't have power, so it took him a little while to get the ball rolling.
Here is the Grove. Joe, a very nice gentleman, going to give Chris a life. Now here's Ancient Stirrings. Top 5 cards, take a colorless card among them. So if he can find a Wormcoil Engine, perhaps an Oblivion Stone, something like that, he can sew it up.
Even mana is not bad here because of Eye of Ugin.
Yep. Well, I think he'll go with that one.
Sure.
Good choice. Wormcoil Engine is about to be here. Karn has not been activated yet this turn. Looks like the elevator is going to go up. So Shrapnel Blast. Yep, Chris almost showed it. And I like the concession here a lot.
Nothing more to be gained and doesn't want to show these cards.
He's not winning. This game is over. You want to hide Shrapnel Blast as far as information is concerned because Joe may not play around it next game because you don't typically see Shrapnel Blast in Affinity in Modern. So Chris Andersen concedes game number 1. Joe Lossett up a game, green red Tron over Affinity, which means we're going to go to the sideboards. We're going to start with Andersen. He is a fan of the Gearpow Aether Grid as well. He's got 2 copies of that, 2 Spell Skies, a Nature's Claim, 3 Etch Champions, 2 Whip Flares, 2 Ancient Grudge, and 3 Spell Pierce.
I think on the play, Chris can board in his copies of Spell Pierce if he wants them. Now, that card falls off a table once Lossett has assembled Tron. But Spell Pierce in the early game, disrupting his ability to find for land, cast cards like Sylvan Scrying and Ancient Stirrings and so forth, I think is good enough. Ancient Grudge is an option as it's disruptive early on in the game, but that card strikes me as being bad in a bunch of spots as well. So I don't know how much Chris is going to want to dilute his deck here.
On the other side of things here for Joe, he's got 2 Thractus, 2 Spell Sky, a Relic Progenitus, 2 Crucible Worlds, 3 Nature's Claims, 3 Rending Volleys, a Fire Spout, and a Ghost Quarter.
Seems pretty straightforward stuff to me. The 3 copies of Nature's Claim certainly coming in here. I think the additional copy of Fire Spout, and I don't mind having an extra copy of Ghost Quarter as fighting over Affinity's various Nexuses. An important part of the matchup as Tron can be soft to man lands at times. Oblivion Stone doesn't catch it. Karn's not great at answering them, and so I think the extra Ghost Quarter comes in. Probably not paired with the Crucible Worlds. I don't think it's that kind of matchup, but I'd want to have another copy just to draw. I
definitely want another Ghost Quarter. Those Nature's Claims, as you did mention, as well, very useful. And Relic Progenitus is an easy one to sideboard out. Same can be said for Ugin the Spirit Dragon.
Yep, easy enough. And I think the Thragtusk probably does not come in this matchup. I think Affinity is too good at attacking wide and flying, and it's slow and all that. But if Joe feels like Ugin and his relics are too bad and he doesn't have enough cards to bring in, we might see a Thragtusk or 2.
Well, those are the options there for both players. They're shuffling up, getting ready to go. So we will very quickly talk about Next Level Magic, Next Level Deck Building, the Next Level Library by Patrick Chapin.
Yeah, available here. We got the 2 books, Next Level Magic, which is a focus on playing the game, and Next Level Deck Building, much more of an emphasis on building decks. Players of all ability levels, if you're new to the game, if you're trying to get to the next level in your PTQ and Grand Prix grinds, both these books are excellent. They're available on paperbook and ebook right now at starcgames.com/nextlevel.
The innovator. There's nothing he can't do.
A writer. A music producer.
A Hall of Famer.
A Hall of Famer.
2-time Worlds runner-up.
Game designer.
Pro Tour champion.
Lots of stuff he probably does on the side we don't even know about.
Yep, 2 books, though.
Prolific.
We know he's had time to do that.
Renaissance man.
You got one more?
I could go on for days.
I know you can. I know you can. Both these players will take a look at their opening hands here. We'll see if they can find 7 cards that they like. Chris Andersen will be on the play. We'll see if he can find an opening hand that he likes. Looks like both players are happy. So it appears they are good to go. Let's see what Chris has here. Again, this matchup very swingy back and forth. It actually just puts the onus on both players to have really impressive starts because they can get up to starts that no one can catch up with, as we saw last game from Joe.
This feels like the type of matchup where, in terms of percentages, it's very close, but usually one person is just blowing out the other.
Yep.
The games themselves don't look close, but in terms of percentage points, they're close to 50-50.
Expedition map is where Lossett's going to start. Here's a Darksteel Citadel. This is a Cranial Plating. That is a Mox Opal. Equip the Worker, coming across here for a healthy amount of damage. It'll be 5.
Solid start.
Yep. Now for Lossett, you need a card like Pyroclasm. You need a card like Nature's Claim right away because getting Tron online might be a little bit too slow this game. We'll see.
Although Pyroclasm is trouble because the card he has to be worried about here is Cranial Plating,
Yep.
and any replacement threat that Andersen finds, including the Nexus he has in play, well, the plating can just go there.
Yeah, in situations like this, where Joe started off with an Urza's Power Plant, he has an Urza's Tower in hand, you know, you've got 2 avenues you can go. If you've got a card like Nature's Claim or Pyroclasm, that's one way you can go. Or you can just say, I'm just going to try to overpower you.
Yeah, just rush to Tron.
Yeah.
A lot of this is going to depend on whether or not Lossett saw that Shrapnel Blast that Andersen almost discarded. I think if he knows about it, he's going to err on the side of caution, try to protect his life total, give up a little bit in terms of development. to keep himself out of burn range.
And the other thing here, you see Joe's going to play Nature's Claim on the main phase. Chris will get his 4 life, all that good stuff. But Chris has another copy of Cranial Plating in hand. So, it wouldn't surprise me that Joe would be trying to play around a card like Spell Pierce right now, though he hasn't seen blue mana. Because Chris can now say, okay, I'll just Plating up again and attack you. We'll see if he wants to get the other point of damage in by activating the Nexus. It appears that he does. So a pretty healthy attack here from Andersen. Looks like 7. Lossett's going to go down to 8. Andersen does have a copy of Shrapnel Blast and Steel Overseer in hand. He also has the Flyer out there and Blinkmoth Nexus hiding among the lands.
As you mentioned earlier, very important for Tron to be interacting early in this matchup.
Yes. And it's just really tough there because, I completely understand why Joe played Nature's Claim when he did, because if Nature's Claim gets Spell Pierce, this one's over. But he ends up taking a huge shot there because it wouldn't surprise you to see maybe Andersen say, I'll just play another Cranial Plating and put my worker attack, and then he just Nature's Claims the worker.
That is one thing, although at that point, Chris gets to go, all right, I'll activate my Nexus, the modular moves on there, and now I have 2 platings on a man land that's very hard for you to answer.
Yeah.
It's tough in either direction.
There's a tower. Let's see what this is going to be. Perhaps Fire Spout in hand here for Joe? Yep. That'll take care of the worker. Now, Joe does have a copy of Ghost Quarter in hand. He also has access to a copy of Ghost Quarter because of the Expedition map. But Andersen's going to be able to put himself in a nice situation here, which is activate the Blinkmoth Nexus, fire up, come across for a pretty healthy amount, and I think we'll see a Shrapnel Blast finish it off here.
Yeah.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points of damage. Lossette's going to go down to 2. Shrapnel Blast will take care of it. And we're going to get ready here for game number 3 as Chris Andersen ties it up against Joe Lossett. Affinity, Green Red Shroud. Going to play a third game. I think you said it best, really. The games, when whoever wins, they're pretty lopsided.
Yeah. I mean, Lossett had Nature's Claim, Fire Spout, and did not get to his 4th turn. So goes to show you how powerful Affinity is, especially in these kind of matchups that are mostly about speed. Cranial Plating, the most important card in the deck. I've always felt the deck is, there's Arcbound Ravager matchups that are about removal, and then there's Cranial Plating matchups that are about speed. This is definitely a Cranial Plating matchup. Not that Ravager's bad, Tron still has removal and sweepers, but Cranial Plating is Andersen's marquee card for this matchup.
It's an A+.
Yeah.
So these players are going to shuffle up for game number 3. I'll tell you a little more about Chris Andersen, 25-year-old from Indianapolis, Indiana, who has decided he wants to go to the Players' Championship. And I'll tell you what, since he's come back this year, and I think about the first Open Series event that we had in Columbus, that, oddly enough, Joe Lossett won, Chris has been on a tear this year.
Yeah, he is. He's a player who's gone through peaks and valleys with the amount that he's played Magic and his investment level and his quality of play. Right now, we're seeing him at his peak. He's been playing a lot, and his performance over the last couple of months, no one can argue with the results he's posting.
Invitational top 8 during Season 1 of this year on the Open Series. 16 Open Series top 8s with 1 W. 9-time Hearthstone legend. I did not know that. I assume that's hard to accomplish?
It takes a lot of time. It's tough to do skill-wise, and also is very time-consuming.
His brother is lead singer of the rock band We Are Forever, and Chris started playing Magic at the age of 4, which I've known Chris for a very long time. That is true. I've been to his house. His dad still has all of the cards. His brother used to play. He's been doing this for basically ever.
What's interesting is, I kind of got a sense of that when I had a conversation with Chris where he was very knowledgeable about alpha and beta cards, and he just seemed way too young for that.
Yep.
But he's been playing for about as long as I have.
Yeah. It is pretty incredible. 25 now, so yeah, we're on 21 years that he's been doing this thing. Basically since the start of the game. Lossett will take a look at his opening hand. He'll be on the play here for game number 3. It is a very swingy matchup. We saw Joe Lossett kick the crap out of Chris game 1, and Chris said, I can do that too to you.
Yep.
That's how this matchup goes. Joe's going to take a mulligan. Looks like Chris is going to keep. As far as Joe Lossett is concerned, the player from California, not close to here, Redlands to be exact, 36 years old, an invitational top 8 for him as well, 2014 season 1. Burn and Miracles were his weapons of choice back then. 17 Open Series top 8s with 5 wins, and as we oftentimes like to say, this is Legacy Specialist.
Legacy Specialist, 4 of those in Standard.
4 Standard Open wins, 1 Legacy win with Miracles. Varsity rower in the University of Colorado, Star Wars fanatic, and he loves StarCraft 2, as oddly enough, most of our players in the Open Series do.
Well, we got a lot of our high-profile players are either competitive athletes, either now or at one point in their time in their life, or they're very passionate about other esports.
Yeah. Don't know if you saw ESPN.com hiring an esports coordinator.
I saw that.
Pretty cool stuff. Nurse's Mind is where Lossett's going to start. It's a chromatic sphere, and we are underway here in game number 3. Arcbound Ravager the draw here for Andersen. A Blink Moth Nexus into an Arcbound Worker. Pass the turn back over to Lossett. Lossett will take a draw step. Picked up a copy of Wormcoil Engine. Now, it looks like Lossett may have mulliganed himself into the Tron.
Yeah, appears to be just lands and a Wormcoil Engine.
There are worse starts. He'll just pass the turn back, not going to break the sphere, which I like because he's got no reason to just yet. He's already got Tron and Wormcoil. He's got a payoff. He'll need that sphere later. This is a Mox Opal. Cranial Plating is not going to be cast just yet. Just going to be a Steel Overseer. And now here's an attack for 1. Though the Mox Opal is online. Lossett will draw. Didn't get a great look at it. But with a mine and a power plant, needs tower to complete, and he does have tower in hand. So Tron is on. Sometimes Magic is a simple game. Here's a Wormcoil Engine. And Chris is definitely on a damage plan this game, not an infect plan.
Now, with Ravager in hand, along with Steel Overseer, Andersen has a lot of routes to circumvent this Wormcoil Engine.
Correct.
Can go above it, can make attacking really challenging.
There's another Glimmer Void. You see Chris's hand right now. Hangerback Walker, Arcbound Ravager, Spell Pierce, Shrapnel Blast. Pretty good hand. Feels like it might be a winning combination for him. Just got to figure out how to play it all. Looks like he might start with Hangerback Walker. And he will. So that'll get a counter, of course. Now here's a Ravager that'll also enter with a counter. So now he can get pretty flashy. He's got an active Steel Overseer. I feel like that Hangerback Walker is going to grow quite a bit this game.
The risk that Chris is taking with this line of play is Oblivion Stone.
Yep.
You know, he does get a little bit of work around here as he gets Hangerback Walker to leave some Thopters left over, gets to move a bunch of stuff onto the Ravager and then onto Hangerback Walker. But still not a card he's looking to see, especially with Lossett showing Fire Spout in previous games. He can handle a sea of Thopter tokens.
Lossett's going to cash in a sphere. The question is green or red. Joe's got to make a decision. He'll draw a card. Picked up a Grove of the Burn Willows, so it doesn't matter all that much. But unfortunately here for Joe, he doesn't have anything to do outside of Spellskite. His hand is all lands in a Spellskite right now. A Forest, a Grove, 2 more Tron pieces, and Spellskite is the grip. Now, Spellskite's okay in this situation because, again, it does one-up modular. But outside of that, not much to be excited about here for Joe Lossett.
Yeah, this is problematic for Joe here as, you know, going on the offensive Wormcoil Engine, given the cards that Chris has in play, that's going to be challenging. Blocking is going to be challenging for the same reason. Though Spellskite to me feels like an important piece of the puzzle of Joe at least slowing down the game a little bit, because with Andersen not having his modular shenanigans, he's leaning much more on Steel Overseer and just kind of attacking. And that gives Joe a lot more time. If Andersen has access to all of his Ravager tricks, I think it's very hard for Lossett to get out from under this.
For Joe, I think you still got to continue to play lands. Don't stop doing that because you want to be able to chain through as many stars and spheres if that kind of turn runs. It kind of comes up next turn or the following turns. You just want to be able to get through as much of your deck as possible to find something relevant. As far as Wormcoil Engine is concerned, I don't think Joe can attack right now.
An attack does not feel bad to me, honestly, because Andersen can't do any modular shenanigans.
I suppose that's true.
He kind of has to chump block or take the hit.
Well, here's your block. Overseer's going to go active, so everything will get a counter. And now Arcbound Ravager is going to sacrifice. Well, it'll eat the worker, so there'll be a modular trigger from the worker. And Joe's going to redirect that. So what Chris can do, this is important to note, is Chris just says, no, I'm not going to use modular.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, the trigger goes on the stack, and then when it resolves, you choose yes or no.
Correct.
So Joe has to say, redirect to Spellskite, and then Chris can go, okay, I'm not doing anything.
Yep. Andersen will draw, picked up a copy of Darksteel Citadel. One thing to note, too, with Chris's board here, he does have that Blinkmoth Nexus down there.
Yep.
And he's going to activate Blinkmoth Nexus. Now, this will be an interesting turn here because we'll kind of see how experienced a player like Chris is with Affinity. This is really the nitty-gritty part of it.
Yeah.
You know, there are some players out there like an Alex Machelton who is great at this sort of stuff because he's been doing it for the better part of a decade. You know, I think of kind of Osip in his prime when he was playing Affinity, stuff like that. But if you're unfamiliar with how you're supposed to balance this sort of thing, it is actually pretty hard because you don't want to give your opponent any extra turns.
The thing is, Andersen's got a lot of control over this with Shrapnel Blast in hand. At a moment's notice, he can get the Spellskite off the table, and then all of his modular tricks are back online.
Sure. Overseer goes active again. More counters are placed onto things. Lossett will draw a card. Another land there in Grove of the Burn Willows. That is not what he's looking for. We may see Warcoil Engine come in again. But, truthfully, it feels like a situation where I don't know if Warcoil Engine should be attacking or blocking, but it seems bad on both sides.
Yeah, the problem now is if he makes an attack here, Chris has kind of reeled him in a little bit because then he gets to blow up the Spellskite if he wants to, and then he's got access to, all right, block with Hangerback Walker, sack it to Ravager, move these counters around, make a bunch of Thopters, et cetera, et cetera. And Joe with a handful of lands can't really do much about it.
Looks like he might have Shrapnel Blast here. Going to go upstairs. Hangerback Walker will be sacrificed. This is something we saw at Pro Tour Magic Origins in the Blue Red Thopters deck.
And I think Andersen is targeting Lossett here,
Yep.
trying to force the issue to make Joe pay 2 to redirect to the Spellskite. So Chris gets an extra 2 damage for his trouble.
Time to untap and draw. And for Andersen, Steel Overseer plus these Thopter tokens, heck of a combination. He's going to fire a Blinkmoth Nexus, it appears. He'll play Signal Pest first. Probably safest to do that. Now that's going to get fired up. Everybody's coming into the red zone, except for the Ravager. Overseer will go active. Bunch of flyers attacking for a bunch of damage. I think Joe's going to show him a hand of lands, and that's going to do it. Chris Andersen will win this match over Joe Lossett 2-1. Affinity will take care of Green-Red Tron. For Lossett, that's his first loss. He slides down to 4-1. But for Chris Andersen, the guy can't lose.
Very impressive there for Affinity to be facing down a turn 3 Wormcoil Engine with Tron on the play, and the Wormcoil basically did nothing.
Yeah.
And that goes to show you, when you don't have a lot of removal, when you don't have access to a lot of sweepers, Affinity can work its way out of a lot of weird spots. And with Hangerback Walker alongside our